There are people who carry loneliness the way others carry a shadow quietly, constantly, without ever putting it down. They smile, they talk, they show up in life, yet deep inside, there is a quiet emptiness no one ever seems to reach. You can sit beside someone and still feel miles away. And if you've lived with this kind of loneliness, one that follows you from room to room, day to day, this video is for you. Loneliness that follows a person through every chapter of life is often misunderstood. Many assume it's simply a matter of being introverted, quiet, or socially withdrawn. But for people who carry this constant sense of distance, loneliness is not a trait they don't choose it. Instead, it is a psychological state shaped by how their mind interprets connection, presence, and emotional safety. These individuals tend to feel life with unusual depth. They don't skim the surface of experiences the way most people do. They absorb emotions, analyze moments, and notice subtle shifts in tone or energy that others overlook. Because of this, everyday interactions, small talk, polite conversations, group dynamics often feel shallow and unfulfilling to them. Their inner world is rich, layered, and full of thoughts they struggle to express verbally. And when you can't articulate your internal experience, it becomes harder for others to truly understand you. Over time, this gap between the world inside and the world outside forms the quiet loneliness they carry. The message is simple. This kind of loneliness isn't a flaw, and it isn't a weakness. It's the mind's unique way of processing life deeply, intensely, and with a sensitivity that isn't common. For many people who feel lonely their entire lives, the origin of that feeling can be traced back to childhood. Loneliness doesn't suddenly appear in adulthood. It grows quietly from the early years, often in households where emotions were never acknowledged, understood, or invited into the conversation. Some grew up in families where strength was demanded and vulnerability was discouraged. Tears were minimized, sensitivity was labeled as weakness, and silence was treated as obedience. In such environments, a child learns early that their inner world is not a place others want to enter. So, they begin to hold everything inside. Others simply lacked emotional companionship. They navigated important moments, fear, joy, confusion, pain, without anyone truly standing beside them. Even if they were surrounded by people, they felt unseen. And when a child doesn't feel seen, the loneliness that forms becomes instinctive, almost automatic. This is why, as adults, they don't just feel lonely. They carry loneliness like a familiar pattern the body remembers. Their adult self may understand the world differently, but the child inside still longs for someone who listens, someone who stays, someone who understands. The gentle truth is this: loneliness in adulthood is often the echo of a childhood where emotional presence was missing. People who carry lifelong loneliness often experience the world through a deeper emotional lens. They don't simply observe life, they feel it. A quiet comment, a shift in someone's mood, a forgotten detail, a change in energy, these small things register strongly for them, sometimes more strongly than they want. This heightened sensitivity creates a different reality, one where emotional depth is both a gift and a burden. While others move through life with lightness, they move through it with awareness. They notice meanings behind words, patterns in relationships, and the emotional temperature of a room the moment they walk in. Yet because their perception is so layered, it becomes hard to find people who meet them at the same depth. They are not lonely because they lack people, they are lonely because they experience life in a way that few can match. What feels normal to others can feel uncomfortably shallow to them. They crave authenticity, nuance, sincerity, connections that feel real instead of routine. This disconnect forms an emotional distance that can be hard to bridge. They live in a world where their sensitivity feels like too much, and other people's emotional range feels like too little. And so they drift inward, not to escape, but because that is where they feel most understood. There are certain patterns that reveal a person has lived with deep, long-term loneliness patterns, subtle enough that others may not notice, but unmistakable to the one experiencing them. One of the most common signs is feeling emotionally tired, even when surrounded by people. A crowd doesn't energize them, Instead, it drains them, because their mind constantly evaluates emotional cues and unspoken signals. Another sign is the lingering sense of not fully belonging anywhere. They can participate, contribute, and blend in, but internally, they still feel like an observer rather than a true part of the group. This quiet disconnect follows them into friendships, workspaces, and even family gatherings. They also prefer conversations that go beyond surface-level topics. Small talk feels mechanical, almost pointless. What they crave is depth, talking about meaning, fears, dreams, identity, or the inner workings of the heart. But because such conversations are rare, they often feel misunderstood, even when surrounded by people who care. And perhaps the deepest sign of all, they bond intensely, but only with a few rare individuals who feel safe. When someone finally understands even 10% of their inner world, the connection feels profound. With everyone else, there remains a silent distance, an emotional gap that never fully closes. For many people who live with constant loneliness, the presence of friends does not automatically translate into emotional connection. They can laugh, join gatherings, and maintain social circles, yet still feel a quiet emptiness underneath. The reason is not the number of people in their life, it is the depth of understanding those people can offer. These individuals often keep their true emotions tucked away. They fear overwhelming others with their inner world or being judged for feeling too much. They have learned to be the strong one, the calm one, the one who doesn't burden anyone. And because they rarely reveal what they truly feel, their friendships remain warm but not always intimate. They also have layers of thought and emotion that few people reach. Most social interactions operate on the surface, while their mind lives several levels deeper. This mismatch makes them feel like outsiders even in familiar spaces. Sometimes, they've grown so used to self-soothing that relying on others feels foreign. Independence becomes a shield, protective but isolating, and so they drift between people yet stay emotionally alone, not because they lack company, but because they lack resonance. The truth is gentle but real. Loneliness isn't the absence of relationships, it's the absence of being understood. Long-term loneliness tends to appear in people who experience the world with unusual depth or vulnerability. Deep introverts, for example, often prefer internal reflection over constant interaction. They connect meaningfully, but selectively, which can make their social world feel small, even when it is emotionally rich. Highly empathetic individuals also struggle. They sense others' feelings instantly, sometimes more intensely than their own. This ability creates one-way emotional transparency. They understand everyone, yet few understand them. It leaves them feeling exposed in a world where others seem emotionally opaque. People with past emotional wounds are also prone to lifelong loneliness. When trust is broken in childhood or early relationships, the heart learns to protect itself. It becomes harder to open up, harder to rely on others, harder to believe that connection can be safe. Highly sensitive people, HSPs, artists, dreamers, and creative minds often fall into this pattern as well. Their inner world is vivid and overflowing, but this same richness makes everyday interactions feel muted in comparison. They crave depth and sincerity that not everyone can offer. The common thread is simple. Those who see more and feel more tend to walk through life alone not because they want to, but because their emotional frequency is rare. People who carry lifelong loneliness are often misunderstood, not because they are unclear, but because the world interprets silence and depth in simplistic ways. Society tends to label them with assumptions that do not reflect their inner truth. They are called difficult, closed off, or unapproachable, when in reality, they are simply cautious with their emotional energy. Many prefer observing before engaging, which others misinterpret as aloofness. Their quiet nature is often mistaken for disinterest, even though they may be deeply attentive beneath the surface. And because they don't open up quickly, people assume they don't want connection, when the truth is, they want it intensely, but only when it feels real. Another common misunderstanding is the belief that they don't like people. In reality, they often feel responsible for protecting others from their depth, fearing that their intensity might be too much. so they ration their vulnerability, sharing only with those who feel emotionally safe. These misunderstandings reinforce their sense of isolation. When others misjudge them repeatedly, it becomes easier to withdraw than to constantly explain. Loneliness isn't their personality, it's a shield formed from years of being misread. The deeper truth is this: they are not distant because they dislike connection. They are distant because they value it too deeply to waste it. Loneliness does not always strike in silence. Sometimes it hits hardest in the middle of noise. One of the most painful moments is when they open up, sincerely sharing something vulnerable, meaningful, or personal, and the other person responds with indifference or a casual change of subject. The emotional disconnect in that instant echoes for days. They also feel intensely lonely at social gatherings where their body is present but their mind feels absent. Surrounded by laughter, music, and movement, they quietly drift inward, feeling like they're watching life from behind a glass wall. The contrast between the outer world and their inner world amplifies the emptiness. Another piercing moment occurs when they understand others far more deeply than others understand them. It creates an emotional imbalance. They give understanding freely, yet receive little in return. Over time, this one-sided clarity becomes exhausting. Even joy can sharpen loneliness. They may laugh, participate, and seem fine, but inside, they sometimes feel hollow, as if something essential is missing. A smile on the outside, silence on the inside. And perhaps the heaviest moment of all, when they want to express something profound, something that truly matters, but stop themselves because they fear being judged, dismissed, or misunderstood. Loneliness isn't a single event, it's a collection of moments that slowly shape a person's emotional world. What many see as loneliness is, in reality, the reflection of an inner world far more complex and vibrant than average. People who feel lonely for long periods often think deeply, feel intensely, and observe life with a sensitivity that most never develop. Their emotional landscape is rich, full of thoughts, dreams, and reflections that rarely make it into conversation simply because few people know how to meet them there. They also possess a powerful sense of empathy. They notice subtleties in tone, shifts in mood, and emotions that others haven't yet named. This sensitivity makes them deeply compassionate but also deeply vulnerable. They give understanding easily, but receiving that level of understanding is rare. Their standards for emotional connection are naturally higher, not in a demanding way, but in an authentic one. They long for conversations that reveal character, for relationships that feel alive, for people who speak from the heart. Anything less feels empty, like drinking water without quenching thirst. The gentle truth is this: they are not lonely because they lack value. They are lonely because their inner world is full, so full that average connections cannot reach or hold it. Loneliness, in this sense, is not emptiness. It is overflow. Healing lifelong loneliness isn't about forcing yourself to be more social or changing who you are. It begins with understanding that you don't need many connections, you just need a few genuine ones. Start by allowing yourself to form slow, honest connections with one or two people who feel emotionally safe. Depth grows in quiet spaces, not crowded ones. Gradually practice sharing small pieces of your inner world. You don't need to reveal everything at once. A sentence, a feeling, a small confession, these gentle steps teach your mind that connection can be safe and reciprocal. Writing is another powerful tool. Putting thoughts onto paper gives them space to breathe, reducing the emotional pressure you carry inside. It helps you understand yourself better, which makes it easier for others to understand you too. Surround yourself with environments and people who operate on your frequency, those who value depth, calm, energy, vulnerability, authenticity. When the environment matches your inner world, the loneliness begins to soften. And most importantly, allow yourself to need others. Needing connection is not weakness, it is human. You do not have to carry everything alone. Healing loneliness is not about becoming someone else. It's about finding spaces where who you already are can finally rest. Loneliness is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that your heart feels deeply, loves deeply, and longs for a connection that is real. You are not difficult to understand, you simply haven't met many people who listen with the same depth that you feel. One day, the right person or the right connection will meet you where you are, and the loneliness you carry will finally be allowed to rest.